Craig Walker, CEO of Dialpad. It's a cloud-based communication system that works across all devices and platforms that includes delivering voice, video, text, and screen sharing. Craig, nice to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, explain to me exactly how does Dialpad work?
Yeah, so the way we look at it is businesses are now moving all their productivity to the cloud. Their emails in the cloud, their calendars in the cloud. And to have a phone system or a communication system that's not in the cloud, something that's tied to a desk like it's 1990, just doesn't make any sense. So what we wanted to do is build a system that allows workers to be super productive, whether they're at work in front of their desk, if they're on their mobile phone, out on the road, if they're on their laptop, if they're on their tablet. Basically give you all the flexibility and all the power of your communication system, no matter where you are.
Because like you've said, work is no longer, it's not a place you go, it's an activity you do.
That's right.
How is this different then from Google Voice? That's a technology that you know a little something about. In fact, you started Grand Central, and that's the company that Google acquired, and then it later became Google Voice.
Yeah, so Google Voice was this great consumer service, right? And our goals at Google Voice were, how do you take all the cool features out of the phone system and move them to the cloud and let you as an end user be in control of, what rings when people call you, put all your voicemail into the cloud, turn it into text, make it searchable, save it forever, and basically give you your own little private phone company or phone service that you could set up any way you want. But it didn't work for businesses. And businesses are now, like, it's crazy. You go into a business today and it's like you've gotten in a time machine. And they're, you come straight out of college, you've done nothing but live on your mobile phone, and then they give you a PBX with a desk phone, and you're like, what in the world is this? So this was all about taking kind of what we learned at Google Voice and then apply those same user delight, great design, usable features, but bring them into an enterprise environment.
And then what are some of the other advantages of being cloud-based? Does it affect quality, price?
Oh yeah, so one, it's you're never pushing an update. You're never paying for a maintenance contract. You're never having to take down the system to put in a patch. Like, everything just kind of comes to you. And it's also, say your internet goes down at work. It will continue to work. It will, disaster recovery, say your business goes offline, the power's out, we'll still ring your cell phones, we'll still make you, anywhere you want to be connected, we'll still connect to you. So it's more reliable, it's certainly cheaper to manage, and all features and updates just get pushed magically, and you just get them without having to do anything for them.
All right. I'm Thuy Vu, broadcasting from the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco. This is Scale the Wall, powered by Nasdaq Private Market. Stay private on your own terms. For more information, you can go to npm.com. Our guest today is Craig Walker of Dialpad. Wanted to also ask you about, your history in the communications business. You've been doing it a long time. You've been entrenched in the internet voice business. Your first startup was also called Dialpad, and it was one of the first voice over IP services, and Yahoo bought that. How do you come up with these ideas?
Well, I think it's more as an end user. Like, I sit there and I think, this is a terrible experience. Like, Dialpad 1 was, international phone calls used to cost like $1 a minute. And this was before Skype. And this is when, like, the monopolist telecoms could charge whatever they want. And so once the internet came onto the scene in the late 90s, mid 90s, we realized if we could push the voice over the internet, which is effectively free, then you can take all those carrier costs out of it. So Dialpad 1 was all about how do you do cheaper international calling. And then all of a sudden, instead of $1 a minute, it's a penny a minute. Hey, that's a much better experience.
Sure.
And then for when we did Grand Central that became Google Voice, it was like I was super frustrated that I'd get off a plane and have to check 3 different voicemail systems. Like, I'd call my cell, I'd call my work, I'd call my home. It made no sense. I should just have one number where they're all there.
So this was out of necessity for you. It solved a problem you had, but you figured it would help a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing with Dialpad. It's like, I want to work on my cell phone. I'm never at my desk. I want to be productive if I work from home, if I'm at Starbucks, if I'm sitting in the lobby here. I should be able to be connected and productive. So if you kind of like do the startup based on your own personal experiences, you get to be like this focus group of one. You don't need to go ask a lot of people. You can just kind of build for you, and hopefully other people care too.
So this is your third company now. Does it get easier with each company or not really?
It gets easier to probably raise money. It gets easier to assemble a team because you have a track record and you have some success. But as far as coming up with a great product that people are actually going to use and pay for, I mean, that's still difficult.
That's always
and
the
you
challenge.
still, yeah, and you still have everything. It has to work. It has to be delightful. It has to be, really add value to people, and you have to be able to get the message out in a cost-effective way, and kind of all those hard things of a startup.
So when you need help or need to bounce around ideas, do you tend to network with like-minded individuals, or do you find it valuable to connect with others outside your circle for just a different perspective?
When I need help, I generally lean on the team internally. So I think and I didn't realize this earlier on in my career, but I don't have to come up with all the answers. My team does. They have a ton of answers too. So we put up like this product advisory committee, the PAC, and it's like our most senior engineers, and I'll go to them with problems like, hey, how do we solve this, or I want more viral adoption of this, and they come up with better ideas than I do. So we do things like that.
All right, and we always like to wrap up this first segment with the same question, because we want to hear from the entrepreneurs about the best 3 pieces of advice you can offer to an aspiring entrepreneur or business owner.
Yeah, so the first one I'd say, believe in yourself, because running a startup, there's highs and lows, and there's all sorts of self-doubt, and there's plenty of times you're like, what am I doing? So believe in yourself and you'll power through it. Number 2 is, there's a great quote by Patton of, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week.
And it's I like that.
Yeah, and it is, but it's true. It's like, our advantage as a startup is to move fast, and to move faster than everyone else, to move faster than AT&T or Verizon or any of these guys. And even when you have imperfect information, you still have to move fast, adapt, learn, move. And so that's one. And then lastly, just trust the team that you've put together, because you've picked them, they picked you. You guys are in this together, and they can be super helpful, particularly if you hit a wall and you need some ideas. They're great.
But always be nimble, right?
Always be nimble.
That's the key for every startup.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, we'll come back and talk more with Craig Walker about some of the biggest obstacles and failures he's faced and how he has scaled the wall to success. Scale the Wall is powered by Nasdaq Private Market. Stay private on your own terms. You can learn more by going to npm.com. I'm Thuy Vu, and this is Business Rockstars. Hi there, I'm Thuy Vu, broadcasting from the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco. This is Scale the Wall, powered by Nasdaq Private Market. Stay private on your own terms. For more information, go to npm.com. Well, small business owners always face challenges and hurdles, as we all know, and what they need to do is learn how to scale the wall. And I'm discussing the challenges every entrepreneur faces and how they've overcome the obstacles and scale the wall to success. So joining us today is Craig Walker, CEO of Dialpad. It's a communication system for how people work these days, delivering voice, video, text, and screen sharing across multiple platforms. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
That's quite a product. Who's your biggest competitor in this space?
There's competitors like Cisco and Avaya who traditionally have had these legacy phone systems. I'd say they're probably the ones we're replacing the most. And the reality is, businesses have changed. The way people work has changed. And so having a system that kind of goes with the person as opposed to with the location of the desk is something that we think is really important. So yeah, those are the guys we fight the most.
So you're going up against the big telecom giants.
Yeah.
How tough is that battle? What are your biggest challenges?
It's interesting. I thought it would be, when we launched the product about a year ago, I thought it would be more SMB and mid-market companies and fewer enterprises. Like, it would probably take years to get the credibility for enterprises. But what we found is enterprises really realize that no one's using the systems that they have today. And they're really expensive for their IT department to maintain. And people are sitting there at their desk. Even when they're in front of that phone, they're pulling out their cell phone and using it. And so the adoption from larger enterprises, like Motorola is our largest customer, and it's like the largest cloud solution ever of deployment of a communication system like that. And they've loved it because now all of a sudden everyone is more productive. They're seeing much more collaboration and much more usage of the system. And now it's kind of changed from a culture of IT, kind of like telling the employees, here's what you must use, to the employees saying, hey, I love it. Thank you, IT, give me more. So it's been interesting to see that it's been more mature guys being willing to take that jump.
Interesting. So you've had two other companies. One was sold to Google, one was sold to Yahoo. So you've had great success in the internet voice space. But have you had any failures?
Yeah, I mean, there's failures along the way to every success, right? And there's challenges all the time. So Dialpad 1, which was 2000 to 2005, the internet bubble burst in 2001, and it was rough going. There was no raising a new round of financing. Like, you basically had to make do with what you had, and we had to like shrink the team to a very small core. We had to I canceled the newspaper subscription. I canceled the water service. Like, we were like, it was.
You were really scrappy.
It was scrappy, and it was like everyone had 10 different jobs, and I was the CFO and the general counsel and the CEO, and then it was just crazy. So.
So those were the dark days. I mean, did you think at some point that we may not make it here? We may have to close up shop.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, because you have just the world bearing down on you. You don't have an avenue to raise more money, so basically we had to either increase our revenue or cut our expenses. So we cut our expenses as much as we could, and then luckily it was a good product and revenue continued to grow, and before we ran out of money, we became profitable.
So what was the biggest lesson that you learned from that experience?
The lesson, and I kind of feel like this Depression era kid who never forgets these lessons, is no matter how good the funding environment is, you still have to have a good product, and you still have to be disciplined in how you spend your money. So with Dialpad, we've had great investors, Google Ventures, Andreessen Horowitz, but we've always still been relatively frugal. So we didn't build, a mock Oval Office in our office. We don't have the most extreme, lunches catered and brought in, but we want to keep the money we have and put it to the product.
Tell us a story about the single biggest mistake you ever made in business.
I'll tell you the big. So I left Google, and this was 2010, and I'm like, look, I'm burnt out on voice. I'm going to go into another direction. I joined Google Ventures as their entrepreneur in residence. And I had this great idea of I'm going to go into the restaurant point of sale system because tablets had just come out. And I'm like, okay, the point of sale systems are ridiculously bad, but I knew nothing about the industry. I didn't know, I didn't know who the players were, all that type of stuff. And I spent 6 months kind of trying to get something there started. Thank God for a venture fund letting you experiment with this stuff like this. And I realized I had no competitive advantages there other than hey, I'm a user and I want it to work well for me. So I went back to telecom and everything just kind of clicked again. So that was my biggest.
Note to self, telecom is my forte, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Thuy Vu, broadcasting from the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco. This is Scale the Wall, where we talk about the hard realities of failure in business. Powered by Nasdaq Private Market. Stay private on your own terms. For more information, go to npm.com. And with us right now is Craig Walker, CEO of Dialpad. And you were talking earlier about how you kind of strayed outside your expertise for a while and realized, I got no traction there. And so you retreated from that. When it comes to hitting a brick wall with your business, how do you overcome that?
Well, it depends on what the wall is, right? So, we look at a lot of data, how the products are being used, how they're growing, where people are having issues. We're really, really adamant about customer support, so we check the tickets, we see where there's rough edges, and effectively we try to fix the product and fix the process and make it a better experience at all times. So our first product we launched is this conferencing service called Uber Conference, where you dial a phone number, don't have to enter any pins, and then we give you a link so you can see who's on the call and who's talking and the LinkedIn profile of people, because I hated conference calls. It was horrible. You'd dial a number, enter a pin, get dropped in this room, didn't know who was there. So, but it wasn't growing very well because we were trying to be really sneaky, not sneaky, but really smart and overly too smart of every single person we'd try to identify, and we'd give, this is our first version, we'd give everyone their own pin, so when you showed up, we'd know it was you. And it became so complex, and people were sharing their pins and inviting other people, and it was just a disaster. So we ended up going the entire opposite way, get rid of all pins entirely, and then it just grew that was the biggest change. So the first 12 months were kind of middling, and then from then on, it's just been high to the right. So, just looking at feedback from your users and trying to make a better product.
Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Hopefully running the super successful business communications company. But in reality, like this is a growing need. There's still over half the businesses in the US are still have IT departments that are running their own Microsoft Exchange servers and their own PBXs and their own file servers, and all that stuff has to move to the cloud. It just doesn't make any sense. So there's this huge market that still hasn't even come to the cloud yet, and when they do, they're going to have a system like ours.
You seem to be a good fit for Google, let's say, and let's say Google wants to buy you, right? Would you consider that again? You sold a company to Yahoo, you sold a company to Google. Are you done selling your company? Do you want to hang on to this one for a while?
Well, I got to tell you, I love the experience with Google. That's a great company, and being able to launch Google Voice and really can have control of its destiny was a lot of fun. So my whole mission is how do we get these solutions to as many people as quickly as possible? And it's great at a startup because you're in full control. You don't have to ask permission for, hey, I want a new feature. I don't have to sell it up the chain. Yeah. So we're able to move really fast, and I really like that about a startup. And so as long as we're able to keep being productive that way, we'd like to stay that way. But if there were an opportunity as well where it's like, hey, we have all these users, we have this brand where we can actually blow you out to like all the corners of the earth immediately, that'd be interesting to think about as well.
Well, I guess I ask that because sometimes entrepreneurs after a while, they want to have a legacy company, something they can hang on to for a while. And then, for example, in your case, Dialpad 1 was acquired by Yahoo. Yahoo ended up not really doing a whole lot with it, and I'm sure that as the inventor of that, it's a little disappointing to see that nothing ever came of it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a little disappointing when that happens, and I think that's how my calculus isn't, the legacy. I don't care if it's the Craig company or not, but if it's the product that I'm proud of and that it gets to hundreds of millions of users, then that's an awesome legacy. So that's what I'm really aiming for.
Okay. Well, you have a lot of experience under your belt. So what are the 3 biggest lessons to learn in dealing with the challenges of starting or growing a business?
So probably the most important thing to be successful, it all comes down to the team you put together. You spend so much time together and you work through so many issues that they have to have kind of the right culture and kind of a shared vision of why you're doing all this hard work. So the team you work with is super, super important, and you can't let bad apples be there. And we really haven't had any, so that's great. But we've been doing this for a long time, so we're lucky. Also, having really good investors that believe in you and back you as a team and really support you, like Google Ventures, Andreessen Horowitz, Felicis, Workbench, SoftBank, they've all been great investors. So that makes it a lot easier. And then lastly, really focus on the end user. I think a lot of times people make a mistake and they're like, look, I'm selling to the IT guy, so I care about the IT guy. I kind of care about the IT guy, but I care more about the employee who's actually using the product. And if you can get the employees using the product happy, he'll tell the IT guy. So that's, we always focus on the end user.
Those are good tips. Any regrets about anything that you've done as an entrepreneur that you could take back if you could? Over the last 15 years, have you regretted anything? Yeah, plenty of things. But I think the things where I've regretted it the most is when I've done things that just didn't feel natural, where like someone else is like, this is the way it should be, and you kind of get convinced of it, even though it doesn't feel right in your gut, and then generally you fix that relatively soon. But or trying to get into the restaurant point of sale business
exactly.
when you're really a telecom guy.
That's exactly right. Well, and I mean, that was, talk about a lesson learned, like where you have competitive advantages. So 15 years in the telecom industry and relationships with all these different carriers and understanding the technology cold versus walking into your first restaurant trade show and not knowing a single person or anything. It's like, it felt really good to go back to telecom.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Much luck to you with Dialpad 2 this time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks to my guest, Craig Walker of Dialpad. Great stories and lessons that he shared with us. Join us every Friday as we scale the wall, powered by Nasdaq Private Market. Stay private on your own terms. For more information, go to npm.com. I'm Thuy Vu. Thanks for being with us. This is Business Rockstars.